so much, Bobby, for the introduction. And again, my name is Ines. I am the CEO of Chainparency. I want to just begin by first expressing our thanks for the opportunity to be able to speak here this year. It's our first time here at this conference, so thank you all for having us. And you know, we are very excited about all the opportunities that we're hearing about, and so as we think about where this industry is going, all the potential, we want to be able to emphasize some key things here today, particularly, and I think a lot of the panel will mention here today, is that how we will be able to propel this industry forward. A lot of it will depend greatly on how we can critically be able to measure and validate key claims that we're having in our supply chains. And this is something that all of us will touch on differently. So let me go ahead and dive in. So really quickly on Chainparency, we are a supply chain data solutions company. So we develop applications and tools that help our customers to real-time collect supply chain data throughout their entire product value chains. And we've been fortunate over the years to be able to work with a variety of different customers and partners, and to be able to leverage our technology to achieve some first-of-a-kind milestones throughout global supply chains. And just to give an example of some of the work that we've done with our current customers in terms of collecting the right kind of data that's needed to validate the claims in your supply chain, and specifically to validate environmental and sustainability claims. And you can see here, it really runs from a variety of different products and industries, both from the industrial to consumer retail use cases. And we're really proud of the work that we've done in working forests and our partnership with the U.S. Endowment for Forestry and Communities. This is the nation's largest public charity dedicated to the economic vitality of working forests and forest communities, and to support their Forest Trust Network. This is a growing consortium of leading enterprises that are utilizing blockchain technology in forestry supply chains. So by virtue of the work that we have there and the relationships there, we've been able to work on a variety of different use cases, leveraging our technology from industrial wood pellets, paper and pulp, biochar to the hardwood. So this is something that we've been able to utilize this technology across a variety of different use cases. As we talk about sustainability in our supply chains, I think we can kind of distill it down to these four different buckets, and I think some of the speakers have already highlighted this. But specifically and really important as we talk about origination, and more to the point, if we're talking about feedstock, the origination and integrity of feedstock, and if we're talking about SAF, maybe that's proving that it's used cooking oil versus virgin palm oil, or maybe it's trying to understand your level of sustainability, regenerative farming practices. But all of that has to do with addressing questions at the point of origin of where your feedstock is coming from, and essentially geofencing that area and validating those claims. Then as those particular assets or commodities start to move through the supply chain, we can start to address the question of chain of custody and provenance to ensure the integrity of those particular assets. And then, like all of us have been talking about throughout this entire conference, in terms of environmental impact. So if you're doing an LCA, if you're accounting for carbon, and trying to measure additionality or co-benefits, or you're participating in the voluntary carbon markets, all of this has to be measured and validated. And as I believe, Benji, your name you mentioned earlier, is that the reality is there's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of fraud that's happening right now. When this fraud occurs, it's very damaging to the entire industry, and certainly undermines what we're trying to do for the global economy and the environment. And with that, of course, we have compliance. If you're talking about UDR, if you're talking about tax credits, or any of these different buckets, all of that centers around having high integrity data. And that's the problem that we have here, is that we have a supply chain visibility issue. The reality is that the majority of enterprises globally, business leaders, they simply don't have the data they need to be able to make effective decisions as it relates to their supply chains. If you don't have good data, not only will you not reach your environmental strategic goals, but you're also exposed to substantial amount of risk. In addition to fraud, you may suffer from fines, litigation, class action lawsuits, and of course reputational damage. So there's a lot of risk out there when you don't have the kind of visibility and data needed in your supply chains. So there's a lot of friction points for why this happens, and I think in this presentation I want to drill down on two areas. One that we often hear a lot about is, are there the tools and technologies out there that all stakeholders in the supply chain can leverage and utilize to be able to really collect and measure all that data in your supply chain? That's one. The second part, which I think is really related, is that there's the human questions. Let's put the technology aside. How do you motivate and incentivize all the different folks in your supply chain, especially upstream in that first mile, to actually participate in data collection? That is something that's very difficult right now, or historically has been. So these are, I would say, two elements that I think probably everybody encounters on some level in their supply chains. And when we talk about the tools and technologies, the good thing is that there are so many different technologies available today that can provide a tremendous amount of data and insights in your supply chain. And I'm sure everyone on this panel, we're all touching it at different areas. But to be able to harness all of that affordably and at scale, that is probably one of the biggest questions. And when we talk about it, I think John Pierce mentioned this yesterday in his talk. He brought up the concept about maybe it's not the silver bullet, it's the silver shotgun. We think about that in supply chains as well, is that there's no one technology that's probably going to do it to give you the confidence you need. It's probably more when we think about it as a digital mosaic. The more data points you can collect with high integrity, the more likely you're going to approach what is actually true in your supply chain. So collecting data is one part. The second one is, how do you ensure the ongoing integrity and the preservation of that data? And that's where blockchain technology comes in. And I want to take a minute or two on blockchain. Probably everybody has heard about blockchain on some level here, and some of it good and maybe some of it bad. So I'd like to start by talking about what blockchain is not, right? So there's a lot of talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. That is a use case. Digital currencies are a kind of digital asset that runs on the underlying blockchain technology network. So they're actually very different. When we talk about blockchain, a lot of times it's referred to as a distributed ledger. Maybe more simply, we can just think about it as a digital notebook. This notebook has, chronologically, will list some unique transactions and events, okay? And I think for the purposes of supply chain, you can think about all those unique events that happen in your supply chain, that happen chronologically, and they need to be recorded. And so this is what is one of the great use cases, is to be able to record those events on a blockchain ledger. Now, this digital notebook has some unique attributes. One is that it's an all-digital computer software code solution. So it has the benefit of being able to streamline and even automate some of your operations and processes in your supply chain. The other part is that you're talking about an all-digital, real-time solution. And critically important is that for any transaction that happens in your supply chain, there's a timestamp, it's real-time and irreversibly recorded on this ledger. What that means is, if you try to tamper with some of this data that's been posted, you will have a very glaring different signature and a different timestamp associated with it than the original transaction that occurred. So if you think about it from an audit perspective, the ledger is very powerful. So this is definitely one of the best use cases that you're going to hear about from an enterprise blockchain perspective. The other piece that I touched on is the human element, right? And so how do you incentivize and encourage people to actually participate in data collection, sustainability practices, climate smart practices? There needs to be economic incentives. And so when we think about technology, it's not just a tool. It's how do you have this tool that people can use and they'll directly benefit from. And this is something that we encourage from all of our customers, all of our partners, is how do we start thinking about having everyone have a seat at the table, especially when it comes to supply chains. And if you want, end-to-end data traceability, you want to be able to have premium voluntary carbon offsets, well, that's going to require higher integrity data, and you need to have everybody to participate. So just to give you an example of some of the different areas that we talk to our different partners and customers on a routine basis, technology can definitely help to realize economic incentives and benefits for these different stakeholders. So if you're using technology and you're collecting data, why not get paid faster? That can certainly happen today with available technologies, to include blockchain technology. Of course, you're digitizing a lot of the paperwork, which we all know a lot of it in that first mile is paper. So can you make lives better and easier for people? And can you give them some other incentives? So this is part of the puzzle, is to harmonize technology with economic incentives and to have all of that to get to the visibility that we need in our supply chains. So that's why we built GoTrace. GoTrace for us, this is our flagship product. It is a first-of-a-kind turnkey and modular data solution platform that empowers any stakeholder in the supply chain, regardless of size, their budget, their technical proficiency, to engage in end-to-end data management and data collection, track and trace at scale. A mobile device is all that is needed to get started. So think back to that ledger, that digital notebook. At a minimum, you're talking about unique digital IDs, timestamps, lat launch coordinates, GPS events, all of that real-time and irreversibly recorded on a ledger for data integrity preservation purposes. But if you have more complex supply chains, the system has open APIs, just basically meaning that it can connect with any third-party external data system to be able to have an end-to-end solution, end-to-end visibility. And of course, this platform and technology opens up many opportunities for stakeholders to be able to have direct benefit from utilizing this technology and traceability solutions. We have a short video, so this will provide additional texture, and then we'll move to close the presentation. So you can see just from that short video, the idea is to take all the critical events, transactions, the key data elements in your supply chain, digitize it, and to put that in a ledger for high integrity and 24/7 audit purposes. And today we've done that for all sorts of different data elements. I mentioned the coordinates and geo-coordinates, timestamps, IDs, but lab results, we do photos, videos, all that can be uniquely timestamped and hashed with a signature on the blockchain. to ensure that there's no tampering with the data. And a lot of what we're starting to see right now is a real interest in the digitization process in supply chains, especially in that first mile. So this example here, we're doing a lot to support the procurement and supplier onboarding approval processes, all of that digitized. And then once those assets are ready to be able to move through the supply chain, that's when our track and trace solutions kick in. And you can see here the granularity. So every one of those blue check marks, that is the ability to audit those transactions on a ledger to prove when it was time-stamped and all the coordinates. And again, it's just an end-to-end solution. And so when we talk about, are the technologies available today? Yes. Can you have it all harmonized under one platform and able to be integrated and synchronized with other technology solutions? Absolutely. And is it affordable and scalable? Yes. So it is ready now, and I think there's tremendous opportunity for everyone to be able to start to digitize and have that kind of visibility and integrity in their supply chains. And I'll touch on really quickly some use cases that I think may be relevant. One, in terms of industrial wood pellets, our technologies are being utilized today to essentially support that procurement, supplier onboarding process, and also to be able to ensure that all that fiber is coming from sustainably certified tracts of land. On the biochar side, we're also supporting, again, end-to-end track and trace, and also to support the carbon removal certification support process with their audit. So collecting all that data to validate what's happening in the supply chains. And on the consumer retail side, we have a customer that is essentially utilizing plant-based organic waste to go into some consumer products, specifically lubricants and degreasers, and using our technology to validate that in fact it's plant-based and not petroleum. And for a lot of this, it's this idea of being able to start at the point of origination, that track, and to be able to collect that data in a polygon of acreage and a tract of land, and then track and trace as it goes from that point of origin to save and build. So just to give you some ideas, we are downstairs at exhibit booth 613, I believe. Please find us if you have any questions. We'd be happy to answer them. So thanks again for everybody's attention, and appreciate the opportunity.